We're getting now into more of the film study portion here. We're actually going to see what these teams look like. A lot of the contract stuff is starting to kind of go by the wayside. However, there are still some straggling players and pieces that are going to be fascinating for us to break down, of which the most notable one comes out yesterday. At least we find out some of the addendums here to the Kyler Murray contract. Want to get your thoughts on this because I know, I'm sure for the casual NFL fan, right, they look at this and everybody was making a big deal yesterday of Kyler Murray, he's got an additional 4 hours of independent study per game week. Can you help us figure out, Michael, what that actually means here? Because I'm sure a lot of people are trying to equate this to what is this, like a guy pledging a fraternity and he's got to go to required study hours? Like, what's actually going on here?
Well, when you read the language in the contract, right, so what they're basically saying is they can void this entire contract. They can void the deal if he doesn't comply. So the issue isn't really about anything other than have to incentivize Kyler Murray to work hard. Okay, that's essentially what they're doing. They have decided that they've tried to talk him into it. Remember 2 years ago, there was a New York Times article about, they kind of broke down Murray, and he talked about, he said, I think I'm blessed, and I'm quoting here, I think I'm blessed with cognitive skills to just go out there and see what happens, Murray said. I'm not one of those guys that's going to sit there and kill myself watching film. I don't sit there for 24 hours, break down this team and that team, and watch every game, because in my head, I see so much. So clearly it's been a problem. Like, they've been trying to get him. There's a disconnect with this kid between his teammates and his team. And what the Cardinals did is they tried to incentivize him to work harder. Now, if you listen or do any studies, and I write about this on the Daily Coach, we write about it on the Daily Coach, is incentives never really work. They divide the team. Because when players have certain incentives in their contract not attached to winning, then they become independent contractors, and all they care about is making their money. And it's impossible to develop a culture within that framework. So to me, this is just more evidence on why you shouldn't have given him this contract. Like, this is really bad. Jeff Van Gundy once said, Ben, your best player must set the tone of intolerance for anything that gets in the way of winning. When you reward your best player who doesn't work hard, who isn't all in with this contract, I think it says an awful lot. And frankly, I think this whole Arizona Cardinals organization reminds me a lot of Entourage. I mean, it's just four guys kind of having a good time, all working together. Vinny is, Cliff Kingsbury. You got all these other guys. You saw the show Entourage, right? To me, they remind me of they're just hanging out. Like, does anybody have any sense of adulthood here?
So not that far off from my fraternity comparison, then, clearly, if you're going with the Entourage reference. The one, and the dichotomy here is if you're thinking of this and you say, okay, they just gave him a $230.5 million contract. If you are even in a position where you would need to write something like this, why would that amount even be on the table in the first place? Isn't that kind of the natural follow-up thought that we would all have there to the Kyler situation?
Yeah, I mean, that was if you got to write it in, right? If you're Steve Keim and you're basically you're playing the the problem with the Cardinals front office is they don't have a Murray, they don't have an Eric in the group, right? They got a Johnny Drama, that probably would be Keim. They got Cliff Kingsbury, who would be Vinny, right? They got the owner, who would be Turtle, right? So they got all the parts, right? So they got them all working together. And the reality of it is there's no Eric to kind of organize everybody and say, hey, here's the deal. Like, where's the voice of reason? If we have to give this guy and we have to put this in writing, like, what does that tell our team? What does that tell our team? Like, how do you stand in front of the team and say, we want everybody to work hard? Well, you didn't put it in my contract to work hard. Yeah. Like, why does he have it? Where really? Are you serious? And you say, well, they have all the leverage because they can say to the players, if he doesn't work hard, we're out of the contract. He's not going to work hard. Incentives don't change players' behaviors. It only does it temporary. And this isn't just in sports. This is in business. Like, it doesn't change people's behavior. We could bring on James Clear, who wrote the book Atomic Habits, and he could tell you that there's no way. I mean, how many people have been incentivized to lose weight? I'll tell you a great story. When I worked for the 49ers, Bubba Paris, we incentivized him to lose weight, right? This is before the cap, so we weren't doing anything illegal. So Bill Walsh bought this giant big screen TV. This is 1984. There was no such thing as big screen TVs in 84, right? This huge television, right? And Bill told Bubba, if you lose 35 pounds, the TV's yours, okay? And Lombardi, you got to go to every meal with Bubba and watch him eat. Okay, no problem. So breakfast I'm with Bubba, lunch I'm with Bubba, dinner I'm with Bubba, right? A week goes by, Bubba doesn't lose any weight. Doesn't lose the weight. So now I'm getting blamed for Bubba not losing weight. I'm getting blamed. Are you letting him eat more than he should? No, I'm writing down everything he eats down to the crumbs, right? Okay. Now another week goes by. Bubba gains 2 pounds. Like, how is this possible? Well, the frustrations runs into the Rockland Times newspaper, 1984, no internet, and so one day, this little Italian guy shows up at the offices and says, I think I can solve your problem. It's going to hurt my business, but I could solve your problem. What's that? Well, Bubba comes in every night for 2 pies. I didn't know that. I wasn't going with him. He's eating 2 pizza pies. And he's got this huge television that's waiting for him. It never worked. So, how is it going to work with Murray? You think he's going to all of a sudden, after I read you that quote that he said to the New York Times, he doesn't think he has a problem.
That's so wild. From 1984, even to now, some things clearly, as you're saying, Michael, do not change. You also never mentioned Ari at all in the Entourage. Well, you got to have an Ari.
They don't have an Ari.
Come on, you need an Ari.
I don't see an Ari. I have it cast down to, I think Bidwell's Turtle. Okay. I definitely think Kimes Johnny Drama. I definitely think Cliff Kingsbury is Vinny. There's no doubt. He's the handsome guy in the lot. I just haven't been able to find an Ari because it makes no sense. This is your best player, and you've got to do this? Seriously.
Yeah. How do you even go about enforcing something like that? I mean, and because you talk about how they had you sitting in the room, you're monitoring it. How is this in a true realistic sense logistically actually going to work here?
Well, what they're going to do is they're going to make sure that he watches. Look, a lot of teams do this in a funny way. I know there was one prominent player who was traded who was notoriously never watched the tape. So teams would literally either put cartoons, they would put different things in the tape to see if the player would watch them. Because if he watched them, he'd come back and say, man, why are you putting cartoons in there? Or why are you putting something else in there? And, of course, the player never did, but he said he watched the tape. Now they can probably put spyware on the iPad to know how much he's actively using the thing. But it's not – if he's just because he's using it doesn't mean he's doing it. Yeah. He doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to do it, and I don't care how much you put into it. Just say, that who takes over the team, the next contract. I mean, if Belichick walked out there and said, are you kidding me? We got this guy. He's supposed to be our leader. He's supposed to be the guy who drives the other players. And we got to mandate that he works hard? Are you kidding me? And we rewarded him with $230 million? What about the guys that work hard? What do they feel like?
Just amazing, and I love that this is the kind of the direction we go because we're talking Entourage, we're talking Michael's mid 1980s war stories over here, all for one Kyler Murray. I can't help but think about what you wrote, I believe today, right in the Daily Coach. You were talking about Nick Saban and some of his general life, his life strategies and how he keeps himself so grounded off the field. It's kind of helped him stay sharp as a head coach, and yet the complete polar opposite. It would appear as though, and again, it's kind of unfair when you're comparing a guy to a great coach like a Nick Saban, but you're probably kind of going down that path though with what you're talking about with Murray.
It's not unfair. It's not unfair. If you're an achiever, if you have long-term goals and you're an achiever, you live by. They're not work habits. They're part of your life. They're part of your life. They're the fabric of who you are. You don't turn those off and on.
Cannot turn it off and on. I think that is a great way to at least look. This discussion we could probably have the entire show because there's so many elements here that fascinate me. But we do have other stuff we should probably talk about at some point. Either way, Kyler Murray, this will go down in infamy. I would have to think the independent study clause in the contract. We'll see if this incentive actually works. As Michael says, we kind of doubt it there. We still have the NFC South to discuss today, Michael, and some other news and notes around the NFL. Couple of big extensions in Green Bay. Want to get Michael's thoughts on those. One offensive lineman signing again for the Chicago Bears that is being reported. But we'll start our breakdowns of the NFC South. It is NFC South Day today on the Lombardi Line. We're just getting started. First of 2 hours right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.